Good evening and welcome from Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Koso Adeleke, and on behalf of Legacy, the Historical and Environmental Interest Group of Nigeria, I would like to welcome you to our latest webinar, Uncovering the Mysteries of Oyo-Ile, Old Bara and Koso, heritage sites in the metropolis of the Old Oyo Empire, 490 BC to 1840 AD. As we know, subjects like history and archaeology in academic institutions in Nigeria are not given enough prominence, but it's important to learn that we do have Nigerian experts who are still working very hard to add to the body of knowledge in this area. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our guest presenter, Professor Akin Ogundiran, who will be making a presentation for us. Professor Ogundiran is a highly distinguished professor of history at the Northwestern University, Illinois, and is a visiting professor of archaeology and anthropology at the University of Ibadan. He is an expert on the archaeology and history of Africa over the past 2,500 years, with special emphasis on West Africa. He studied archaeology at Ife University and Ibadan University. He has won numerous honors and prizes. He is president of the Africanist Archaeologists and is a fellow of the Archaeological Association of Nigeria and has contributed to dozens of books and publications. Thank you, Professor, for accepting to do a presentation for us this evening. I am really happy because I have for a long time been aware of your research work on the sites of the Kingdom of Old Oyo.
Good. Well, good evening again. I'm very pleased to be with you. I'm joining you from Chicago, just across the big pond. It is actually afternoon here, so good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are joining us. So yeah, as Madam Kofo said, I'm sharing a little bit about my research into the archaeology and heritage of the Oyo Empire, focusing on three major sites that have been the focus of my research over the past 7 years. Oyo-Ile, Old Bara, and Koso, spanning a period of almost 2,500 years. See here. So, Oyo Empire is situated within the Yoruba-speaking world. And this is the map here. This is not the first place where I've done my work. I actually started based on my training, I started my training at Ile-Ife, and went on to do some work in the Ijesha region, Ijesha area, just 40 kilometers from Ile-Ife. I work in Osogbo, Osun Grove, I work in Ede-Ile. Then travel around Yoruba region and also even Benin itself. I worked in Benin when I was a teacher at University of Benin, as well as Ambrose Ali University, then Bender State University. So I kind of move around a lot. But about 7 years ago, I decided to return to Oyo-Ile, return in the sense that I did part of my training under Professor Babatunde Agbaje-Williams in Oyo-Ile, Koso, back in the late 90s. So 7 years ago, I decided to return there to continue where Professor Agbaje-Williams stopped his research. When we talk about the past and about culture, there are several reasons why people take interest in history. First of all, many of us are concerned with the question, where do we come from? I mean, this is a very human question. Where do we come from? Perhaps only human beings ask that question. among all members of the animal kingdom. We are concerned with the question of where we come from. That means we are thinking about historical origins. when we also take interest in culture and the past, it's also related to the issue of cultural pride and a desire to use culture as our compass to navigate the world. Leading Professor Basihanda, for example, titling his inaugural lecture at the University of Ibadan, No Past, No Present, No Future, that you need the past to be able to navigate the present and the future. And this comes from the need for cultural pride. Then another reason why we tend to focus on culture and history is also the issue of heritage. The question, who owns it? Who is the owner of this, right? Whether it's a festival, it's a dance, or a particular place, we are concerned with the question of heritage. The last, which you hear a lot about from people, is tourism. We want to use our historical heritage, our cultural sites, as sources of generating funds through tourism. So irrespective of your entrance into the issue of the past or the subject of culture or subject of history, heritage boils down to issue of place, time, people, and story. You have to tell the story whenever we are talking about heritage. It's also about place. It's a place that has temporality. It has particular time attached to it. At the end of the day, it's about people. It's not just about things, it's about people. Then archaeology plays a central role in these all ramifications of why we take interest in the past or why we take interest in heritage. Archaeologists do this first by discovering historical sites. By studying these sites to allow us to understand the ways of life in the past. That is the primary focus of archaeology. Archaeologists are not the only one who do this. Historians, of course, who also use different kinds of sources. They engage in this kind of interest. But archaeologists have unique toolkits to help us understand a past that is deeper than what historians can accomplish with documentary sources or oral traditions. Archaeologists deal with tangible materials. As a result of that, archaeologists tend to come up with new stories that may challenge the normatives that we're used to, the norms, the kind of traditions that we are used to. Archaeologists tend to challenge those things and, in fact, dispel some of the ideas we have about the past. Why? Because archaeologists can go far deeper. For example, in my work, I go all the way back to about 500 BC. There's no historian who can do that because they do not have those kind of evidence that archaeologists have. So archaeological research is therefore evidence-driven. It's evidence-driven. Archaeologists also help us with heritage because we are concerned with preserving the historical sites that we study, the cultural sites that we study, the historical values that are attached to those sites. Archaeologists are concerned with preserving them because once we lose them, we know that we are losing a whole dictionary of a people's past. So let's return, though, therefore, to Oyo Empire. This was not the first empire in Yoruba history. I argue in my book, The Yoruba New History, published about 4 years ago. There was an earlier empire called Ife Empire. That's on the screen is to my right. This was an important empire that lasted from about 1100 to 1400 AD. And at the time that Ife Empire was waxing strong, Oyo itself was just a minor kingdom close to River Niger on this yellow button. Then, about 1400, the Empire of Ife dismantled. Like all empires. Empires don't last forever. They are not meant to last forever. They last for, if you're lucky, 300, 400 years, and then the crash for different reasons. But it would take this small kingdom of Oyo another almost 170 years before it started to develop its own wing and then fly on its own and become, in fact, a strict Oyo Ife empire in size. So Oyo was originally a client state of Ile-Ife. Ile-Ife had several client states within its orbit, and Oyo was one of them. So the question you were asking is, what happened? Why did Ife collapse when the Oyo came about? Again, about 170 years after Ife had collapsed. At the time that Ile-Ife was thriving, it was one of the three empires that anchored the political landscape of West Africa. You have Mali to the northwest, you have Kanem Empire to the east. Ile-Ife was the next thing, south of River Niger. These were the three major empires that actually anchored the political landscape of West Africa. But around 1380 AD, we begin to see some kind of environmental as well as political stress. This was connected to what we call Little Ice Age in archaeological language. Little Ice Age refers to very unstable climatic regime in West and Central Africa, as well as the Northern Hemisphere. But in the Northern Hemisphere, Little Ice Age manifests as extreme cold weather patterns. That is in Europe, in Asia, in North America. But in the tropical world where West Africa is located, it manifests as extreme dry condition, very long periods of drought and very unstable weather, which means that rainfall will not come when you expect it to come, and when it did arrive, it's sometimes very violent, very short-lived. So all of this led to political crisis, as a result of hunger, as a result of famine, and many other things. And between 1380 and 1550, all these three empires collapsed. Kanem collapsed, Mali collapsed, Ife collapsed. And in the period between 1400 and 1570, there was very unstable political landscape in which new regional alliances developed, one between the Bonu, Hausa, and Nope on one side, and another one between the Yoruba-speaking people, Mande and the Bariba on the other side. Of course, Benin Kingdom was dealing with its own challenges at the same time. Benin was also fighting for survival as a result of the political collapse that Ile-Ife experienced. So in the middle of this turbulence, Oyo, which was originally located close to River Niger here, by the way, we've not really pinpointed the location. We've not found this particular location, but we know that it's the general area between River Mushi and River Niger. That's where the original Oyo Kingdom was located. But as a result of the political instability of the period, the Oyo people were forced to evacuate their ancestral homeland. And after wandering for about one generation, they ended up settling down in Igboho, where the political landscape of that Oyo Kingdom, you can still find it in Igboho today in form of the palace area where the original Alafis lived. So that's what this picture shows. It is from Igboho now that the Oyo elite, political elite, formed alliances with other political actors in West Africa. I mean, I will argue that this is one of the most important regional alliances that ever formed in African history. It cut across language boundaries. It cut across religious boundaries. It involved the Bariba, the Wasangari warlords, the Jama and the Songa people. In fact, that is where the Yoruba got their name for the Jama, in Islam, Jama, the Songa Muslims who formed the Songa Empire at that time. They were part of the alliances. The Mosi as well, the Mande, they formed an alliance against the Hausa, Nupe, and Kanuri. Because as the Kanuri were expanding to the west, the Songhai were also trying to push to the east. And Hausa land formed the boundary between the two of them. Of course, the Hausa kingdoms fell within the orbit of the Kanuri, and then the Songhai tried to find other alliances, and that's how Oyo became part of that alliance. So the Oyo now led their own, because they wanted to return back to their ancestral home. So they were able to form alliance with these other cultural groups, especially for horses, because they realized that for them to be able to win the war against the Nupe, they would have to become cavalry state. And they were taught, they were helped by these other groups. So once this alliance pushed the Nupe across the River Niger, these cavalrymen did not stop. They began to expand and use their newfound military power to acquire territories. They used different strategies to establish the empire. One was not just conquest; they were absorbing existing polities under their control. They established colonies across the landscape from River Niger all the way to the Atlantic coast. All these red dots shows the colonies that the Oyo people established. And when I say the Oyo people, by this time, there were some Musi, there are some Mande, there are some Ibariba people that became Oyo citizens as a result of the collaboration that they had between 1550 and 1570. Some of them did not return home. They become part of the Yoruba political landscape. They did not abandon their heritage, but they became citizens of Oyo, and they were rewarded for their contributions to this new kingdom by giving them titles. So let me fast forward. So my own research has been about trying to understand how this empire developed. There are 4 components to our archaeological research in this region. We are working primarily within what we call the Old Oyo National Park. This is where the metropolitan area of Oyo is located today. The research focuses on understanding the landscape, settlement, and cultural history of Oyo-Ile, the capital of the empire, which is now within the Old Oyo National Park, right here where this red dot is. We are trying to understand in an anthropological balance the political economy, the social ecology of this metropolis, of this empire, how class and gender dynamics were created, and how they shape the political trajectories of the empire. We are using this project also to train students from the University of Ibadan, University of Jos, Ahmadu Bello University, the University of Ilorin. Students from these institutions have been part of this project, and many of them are now actually pursuing PhD in different universities in North America now. So I'm very proud of them. Timileyin is one of them. We're also using this project for institutional building, that is building human capacity, not just for students, but also for the National Park Service. So this work is in collaboration with the National Park Service because we are conducting this research within that space. So I felt it's important, therefore, to train members of that organization on very basic skills on how to identify archaeological sites, how to do survey, and also providing them with resources, materials that they can use for their work. And the last part of this program is community outreach. It's very important for me and for my team to share what we are discovering, what we are finding with the community, and to engage in public education. I will say more about that later. Now, when we talk about Oyo-Ile and the empire, I mean, I'm sure you'll be asking me, what was there before the empire? So the first thing I want just first thing I want to clarify is that when the Oyo people left Igbo around 1570, they did not really return to their ancestral home. They did not return to where they left about 1400 AD. Because that was about 170-year gap. Instead, they decided to settle close to where they left from, right? They settled in what we call Oyoile. But when they arrived in Oyoile, they actually met people there. The region that they settled on, Oyoile, was part of a vast network of small-scale societies. These are small villages and hamlets, as this simulated GIS simulated picture shows. All these green dots are approximately hamlets, villages that were already existing on the landscape before the Oyo people moved there. Who these people are, we don't really know. We don't know the name they call themselves. We only have the archaeological materials, like this pottery you are seeing here. And then these people also have the propensity to make cross-shaft pavement flatly laid, like the one you are seeing here. Excuse me. Sorry. And then to arrange stones like this. So because of the archaeological feature I found, I call them Atokuta people who arrange stones. Because we don't know the name they call themselves. But we have the archaeological materials. Their pottery is different from the pottery that the Oyo people used. So when the Oyo people arrived around 1570, this is the pottery we find in this stratum. In the strata below that, that's what we find here are this kind of pottery here. So these are two different peoples. What happened to them? We are not sure, but my hypothesis is that many of them were absorbed into the new Oyo settlements that developed in this area, or some of them decided to just move away. If they were not actually, some of them were not killed as a result of Oyo coming in, if they had resisted. But I suspect that they did not really resist these cavalrymen. Instead, some of them either voted with their feet or they became part of the new Oyo political landscape. So until 1570, there's no evidence of towns and cities in this area. Suddenly, between 1570 and 1630, this landscape was no longer a landscape of small-scale settlement. Instead, we now have large-scale settlements. In this picture, so that in 1826, when Hugh Clapperton, the English traveler, was passing through Oyo region, this is what he said. He said, the further we penetrated the country, the more dense we found the population, and civilization became at every step more strikingly apparent. Large towns at a distance of only a few miles from each other lay on all sides of us, basically attesting to the vast urbanism that was present in this region. I will argue that this is one of the most urbanized landscapes in Africa in 1826. You find, and our own archaeological survey has shown this, that almost every 3 kilometers, you are seeing a town or a large settlement. So the focus of my talk of us this evening is going to be on Oyoile, it's going to be on Bara, it's going to be on Koso. And I will tell you more about each of them as we proceed. Let's start with Oyoile now. One characteristic of Oyoile's landscape is the large walls that you will encounter when you enter the city. Now, the city is desolate today. No one is living there except monkeys and the chimps and gorillas and birds and other things. But this was a thriving city between 1570 and 1840. It's about 8 by 10 kilometers in size, actually ranking it about the same size as the present-day Oyo town. The present-day Oyo town is about the same size as the East of Oyo. The landscape was divided into class. The underclass people, enslaved people, lived in the outskirts, and then the citizens and members of course, other enslaved people live within this inner wall here. That's where most people live. The palace is located right here at the center. The Akesa market is opposite the main wall. So some of our workers focus on this in this area. The building of these walls is very important though, and we have been focusing on why they spent a lot of resources building these walls. One of the goals, which is not unique to Oyo, this is something universal among the Yoruba Edo peoples, is that they build walls. It's a way of creating community solidarity and political identity. And that is contributing to the building of the walls. It shows that you're a citizen of that place. You are contributing to the security of the place. Yeah, it's a security mechanism. It's also a way of controlling and monitoring people moving in and out, so that the state could levy and collect taxes on people who are using the gates. It's also a way of analyzing social inequality and developing an hierarchy-based social system. This was also served as a way of creating political control and the kind of bureaucracy to manage the private and public spaces, so that the state was actually monitoring who was coming in, who was going out. And then this is also a methodical urban planning strategy in a way that make a very dense settlement landscape healthy and safe for people, so that it's a way of creating social order, the same way that any functioning city today will have. Where do you throw your trash? Where do you live? Where the rivers are? So it's a way also of managing the urban landscape for the good health and wellness of the citizens. So that's why these walls, they spend a lot of effort, time, and labor in constructing these walls. And at the peak of Oyo City, Agbaje Williams estimated that there will have been about between 100,000 and 150,000 people will have lived in the city. For that period, that was a very heavily, that was an heavily populated city. To have 150,000 people, not many cities in 1826 achieved that. So one of the things we have done is to understand the civil engineering between associated with the construction of this wall. So we did this 20-meter trench about 6 years ago. I would say that this is the longest hand dug trench in Nigerian archaeology. 20-meter long, but only 1 meter wide, because this is a difficult feature to excavate because it's very, very compact. One of the things we discovered there is that the people were actually plastering the wall of their wall. They were plastering these walls. They figured out a way to make cement-like materials which allowed them to smoothen the wall. So when you look at it today, it looks like a lump of dirt, but by looking at the profiles, we can learn a lot about the building technology of the past, how they process their clay, so these were not just mud walls that usually mud wall building. No, this isn't a mud wall. This is something that was methodical. This is something that was well done, but of course, due to the ravages of time, they've collapsed, and what you see now on the surface is this mound. But after doing this excavation, we decided to conserve it for the purpose of other scientists who may want to study the geoarchaeology of the site, and also to conserve it for purpose of tourists who may want to come and see what we have done and also learn about the work we have done. So again, I would like to thank my junior colleagues, the students, for doing all of this hard work. So the end product is this covered trench that we excavated, and so we brought some geoarchaeologists there to help us interpret the site formation processes that led to this mound. And one of them is Professor Gunfalakun, another is Professor Tubosun. Then we also brought National Park Service officers here to share our knowledge with them so they can transfer that information to members of the public when they visit. Our work is research-driven. We are not just looking for monuments. we are asking questions about empire, urbanism, household. I won't read all of these to you, but One thing we've noticed in archaeology of Nigeria in particular is that we don't spend enough time excavating household where people actually live. We tend to excavate walls and other things. But in our own case, we are trying to understand where people live because our questions are micro scale. We want to understand family, how families were composed, how individuality was expressed. We want to understand the corporate identity of lineages. And for us to do that, we need to begin to excavate micro scale spaces like houses where people actually lived. So we can understand their labor, we can understand their crafts, we can understand gender relationship and class as well. So of course, our work is also connected to landscape. We want to understand how this city managed landscape. The time that Oyo people arrived in what we call Oyo now, that was still a part of the Little Ice Age period. The Little Ice Age ended around 1850 or 1860. So it was still a period of ecological instability where water was scarce or water was not always readily available. So one of the questions we are asking is, how did these people manage to have such a large concentration of people in one place and in the middle of ecological instability? And one of the things we are discovering is that they were engaging in water engineering. They were diverting water from the hills, as here, coming down here, to form artificial ponds. So they were digging basins, they were digging ditches below the hills as a way of retaining water. So this is one of the ways that allowed them to actually have this massive number of people, not only people, but also cattle and horses. I mean, anyone who knows a little bit about horses will tell you that horses drink a lot of water. So how do you manage these Calvary states as well as urbanism in the middle of climatic stress? So we are learning a lot about their water management strategies. We're also focusing our attention on the heritage of architectural forms and household organization. So this is the first household that we excavated in Oyo in order to understand the internal dynamics of household composition. And the results have been very stunning, the kinds of things that we're able to discover, because we're able to actually see what was going on in this household at the time that Oyo was evacuated in 1840. Sorry, between 1836 and 1840. We could see what people were doing, you know. So these are architectural features that we excavated. But the archaeological materials are very diverse, including lamps, including cowrie shells, imported glassware from France. We find this, I mean, all these are imported glassware from France, from other parts of Europe, Germany. So they have very good taste. They were drinking good wine, I suppose. And also their animal foods as well. Feasting on us, on donkey, in addition to sheep and cattle, sheep and goats. They were able to see how the layout of pottery at the time that this city was evacuated, so that, and now one of my students who is doing lipid analysis is actually now looking inside these pots to see whether we can even understand the last meals that they ate before they abandoned this household. So that is the kind of micro scale analysis that we are doing in order to fully understand what life was like, in the early 19th century. Let me go back. And then based on that, we are bringing people to the site, the National Park Service and tourists, to actually share with them what life was like at the time that this household was occupied. So because of the granular nature of our work, we can actually share all these details with them, and hoping that these kind of narratives will be part of the story that people tell about Oyo. And so it's not just a story about kings and chiefs, it's also a story about everyday people. The second place I'm going to mention is Koso, which was a royal town and the headquarters of the Shango ritual field. Shango is the primary deity of Oyoile. This was the patron deity of the empire. It was the deity of Alafin that they worshipped. 14 kilometers from Oyoile is Koso. Koso is where all the high priests of Shango resided. Koso was also a kind of country home for the Alafin. So when Alafin wanted to get out of the palace and just go and relax in the countryside, Koso is where they would go. So Koso has always held a very important place in Oyo history and also in Oyo religious beliefs and landscape. It's a place that tourists, if you have not been to Koso, I encourage you to go there. It's a sacred site. It's a sacred site, and it's a place that is filled with a lot of wonders, according to the local people. And I think if you once you climb this hill too, you certainly have some lightheadedness, and you feel that you are in the presence of some supernatural beings. We have not done any excavation here. What we have been doing here is survey the landscape and map out archaeological features, and following the footsteps of Professor Agbaje Williams, Professor Aremu, who worked in this area, we continue to do that work. The challenge here is that these walls, as I've said many times in several talks, they have been here since the site was abandoned around 1840. They have not been occupied. The challenge is we don't know how long these walls will stand. Eventually, they will have to give up to the elements. Exposure to sun, exposure to rain, exposure to the roots of trees will eventually pull down these walls. Unfortunately, there's no one that, in the hierarchies of government or private sector that have taken interest in preserving these walls. And what we have been doing is to understand the technologies that the people use to build a wall like this that is exposed to the elements for this number of years, and yet it's still standing, despite the fact that it is built of lateritic soil. Old Bara is the third site I'm going to mention, and this is what is believed to be the royal necropolis of Oyo, of the kings of Oyo. According to oral tradition, this is where Oyo kings were buried. So in 2017, we were the first archaeologists to identify this site. Local people knew where it was all along, but we were the first archaeologists to discover it. So we started mapping it out. No one knew how big it was, what was inside it. So we launched a very long-term research agenda here in 2017, leading us to the perimeter walls and the internal walls of this very small town. It's a town of about 6.2 kilometers in circumference. The diameter is about 2 kilometers, so it's not as big as Oyo. In fact, the size is about the size of the inner wall, the palace complex of Oyoile itself. It's about that size. The total wall length is about 10.2 kilometers. So through pedestrian walking, we were able to map the wall. And then we launched transect surveys here, following the footsteps of what Agbaje Williams did in Oyoile. We did a transect survey here. So we were able to do 85 test excavations, establish 11 transects, and also conducted 5 large-scale excavations at different sites. In total, we have about 255 square meters excavated. I will argue that this is one of, if not the most excavated archaeological sites in Nigeria today. But what is also stunning about the site are these walls that they built of lateritic, of granitic blocks. We estimated that they will have used between 1.2 and 1.6 million granitic blocks to build the perimeter walls of the town. It's very massive. It's a very massive project. One of the discoveries we've made also is that the site was actually divided into class. The upper class lived on the east side of the settlement, and the lower class, usually the enslaved, live on the other side. Whenever the king of Oyo died, Alaafin died, his wives, as well as slaves, were moved to Bara, and to form the cult that will worship the king never died in Yoruba as well as other Niger Congo cultures. The king never dies, the king only transitions. So the cult of the Alaafin were established here, and these people were set up there to administer to the king. So two sites on the of Bara. We found that would likely be the focus of my next two slides. So this is one of the areas that we excavated where some of the enslaved population lived in Bara. The archaeological signatures there shows that these are not people with a lot of material goods, very limited, because they relied, although they depended on the state to provide for their needs. Most of what they did was to work for the state, not to feed themselves. So this is giving us a very good indication of how class structure worked in Oyo Empire. Lastly, but not the last, one of the things we have been doing is to share our work with the public. We don't just want to publish them in books and journals. We want to share them with people all over the world. So I did this exhibition in 2021, in which the late Alaafin of Oyo, Oba Lamidi Adeyemi, was a guest to share some of the what we have done about his ancestors with him, and I think he was well pleased, and also gave me some ideas about how to interpret some of the things I found. Of course, bringing journalists to the site to be part of this discovery, so they can articulate this new knowledge to the members of the public, is also an important part of our work. Molara Wood is here, Awufeso is here. These are seasoned journalists who brave the bad road from Lagos to the site to actually witness it and also tell the stories to the world. So these are some of the things that our work has been doing. In closing, let me just ask this question. Our policymakers and academics, we always talk about heritage. And I wonder whether we are serious about heritage. If you were to travel with me to this site, if you are not careful, your vehicle will break down many times on the road. Because the road to the site is just terrible. I mean, between Igbeti and this site, which is about a journey of 1 hour will take you 3 hours to the site. And I always wonder if Koso is so remote from that you cannot build a good road to Oyoile or Koso, then are we serious about heritage? The second is that the point I want to make is that heritage is what you claim and use. If you don't claim it, it's no longer yours. If you travel to this site today, this site I just mentioned, you will have to ask yourself, is this our heritage? And if this is part of our heritage, why are these places in a state of disrepair as they are? The last thing I want to say is that the archaeological harvest is plentiful, but laborers and funds are very, very scarce. For policymakers and politicians and other people who are talking about heritage and tourism, they will need to invest resources of human capital, of funds, in order to really bring all of this knowledge into the world. We have a lot. African peoples have a lot to teach the world, but we have to be willing to invest in getting those stories out to the world. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much. I mean, I have really been blown away by this presentation. It's totally exceeded you know, my expectations. You know, the amount of work that you have put into this is really, you know, quite incredible. And I think that if we could, I think all of us would give you a resounding applause. Yeah, I mean, I obviously have lots of questions, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. But I would just like to, you know, before people sort of put their hands up and, you know, if they have questions to ask, I would just like to say that, you know, obviously you have uncovered, you know, artifacts and various things, and you've said that you have actually, you know, started sharing these things with the local community, and you sort of put up an exhibition. But you can imagine if this work was done in some other countries where maybe there are more resources, it would have been a massive exhibition, because what you have done is sort of really, really groundbreaking. And I'm just also wondering, you know, what's happening to the things that you've found, and how are they being protected? I mean, and it seems as though the information that you are sharing, you've been able to share it with the local community, but I really think that there are so many people who have no idea of this groundbreaking work that you're doing.
Well, thank you for that question, and then thanks for your kind words, and also for the kind remarks of people on the Zoom who are saying this is a fantastic presentation. My teacher, Professor Kokore, said that. Thank you so much. Yes, if this has taken place in another part of the world, yes, the whole world will know about it now. But also, archaeology is a very slow process. I call archaeologists slow cooking. Yes, you know, we are always very careful about the claim we make, because we want to make sure that when we make those claims, they are true. So it is one thing to do the excavation. It's another thing to find funding to do carbon dates. Now, one date, just to date one sample, it's about $595. Just one. 1, 2, 3 samples enough for this kind of groundbreaking work. So we have to look for funding. Now, I think, as I said, we've dated more than 20 samples. Multiplied by $595. You can see how that would be beyond even the reach of any Nigerian scholar. I'm going to admit I'm able to do that because I'm located outside Nigeria. That's why I was able to raise funds for that level. But we needed that level of care and attentiveness, as well as caution, so that the claim we are making will be consistent with scientific expectations. So the second thing is to analyze the data and making sure that we know we cross the T's and, you know, put the dots where they are supposed to be. So most of the materials are currently located at the University of Ibadan. That is where the materials are kept. Some of them are also with the National Park Service in Oyo. A very, very few of them are with me in the US because of further analysis that we need to do. You know, there are some equipment we don't have in Nigeria that we can only get abroad. I was talking about strontium analysis. I'm talking about lipid analysis. Those are the things we cannot do in Nigeria. So some very, very few, maybe 1% of these artifacts are with me in the US for further analysis. And as I speak, more than 5 Nigerian students, PhD students, are actually working on these materials in the US as I speak. These are students that have been part of the project in Nigeria who are now working, doing their PhD in the US. So some of these materials will be used in their training as well as for their own masters as well as PhD. So that is what is going on in terms of where the materials are. But in terms of we have not really published some of these materials, you know, so those publications will start coming out before the end of this year because it takes time to do that kind of publication. But I think what I am committed to is to, as you invited me here to share this work, I'm committed to sharing this work with as many people as possible, hoping that people who write for the general public, journalists and other people, they will pick the story and they will be able to write it for that larger audience. So Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I have sort of some other questions, but I think I want to give an opportunity to other people. So if you would like to ask Prof a question, please raise your hand. Okay, Abioye Ayeni, could you please unmute? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you, Madam Koso, for this chance. It's exciting. It's exciting hearing and knowing that works like this are being done. It's so exciting that I think I'll hug. If I want to ask all my questions, it will take me the whole night. So I've narrowed it to 3. So let me ask the 3 just one after the other. At Koso, you said it's a necropolis. It's a necropolis. Were you able to get any human remains? And if yes, have you been able to do any DNA testing on them? In terms of, it opens up a lot of vista in terms of interconnectivity amongst all the tribes, the various tribes, Yoruba, Igalas, Benin, Igbos, that, just move forward. This becomes scientific, not just speculation and argument that we normally like having. Number 2, being an oral, our history, we are mostly oral based. We are mostly oral. Do those people that were tasked with keep coding this thing in memory, do they still exist? And if they still exist, have they been able to corroborate your material findings, the material findings you've had? Or in what way have the tradition, because it was good seeing the late Alaafin of Oyo being part of you, in what ways have the traditional ways of keeping history been able to bear out on this material find that you've so really, really done a human job in discovering? And when you say Iron Age, what were the things that the evidence that you were able to date to give us these ages? Because I think they said Africa was one of the few societies that moved straight from Stone Age to Iron Age without going through the Bronze Age. So please, but those are my questions, but I must say thank you, and I'm really excited to know that this kind of works exist. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. And before I answer your question, let me acknowledge several of my students who have worked on this project for several years who are on Zoom. I think I mentioned Timileyin Ayela Agbe. I think I mentioned Ayobami Dia, Oreoluwa Sodeke. Oreoluwa Sodeke, D as well, Ayobami. So I always joke that my fieldwork is not a place where I train students. Sometimes my students also meet here and then they fall in love, and that is great. So, okay, let me now answer your question, Mr. Ayeni. Thank you for those questions. I call Bara a necropolis because I'm using oral traditions. Oral traditions claim that the kings of Oyo were buried there. We have not seen any human remains belonging to Oyo kings to the Alaafin there. We don't have that evidence, but that's what oral tradition says. However, we found human remains going back to 490 BC in Bara, which preceded Oyo Empire period by almost 2,000 years. So we have that evidence there. And we are hoping to do DNA, but because of the preservation of those remains is not good because of lateritic soil in which they were buried. Laterites are acidic. They don't preserve human remains very well. All we have been able to do is to conduct studies that shows their diet, what they were eating. We can do that. We're able to understand where they were born, what kind of environment they were born, what kind of food they were eating. We're able to do that, but the DNA in them is not well preserved. It has deteriorated after almost 2,500 years. So we don't have that evidence yet, but we'll continue to look. And as DNA techniques improve, we hope we can do that to see how they are connected to the present day populations living in the area, the Yoruba or the Igala, the Igbo. But at this point, these human remains do not have enough DNA that we can use to figure out population distribution or population similarities to the contemporary people. So orality is very important because the archaeology that I do is the archaeology of living traditions. I'm studying people who are living today. I'm studying their history. I'm studying their traditions. So I have to pay attention to oral traditions. Sometimes oral traditions, for example, could lead to archaeological sites. That's how we know where Bara is. That's how we know where Koso is. Without oral traditions, we will not know where they are. So oral tradition is useful in that regard. It also tells us things about migrations, but archaeology is very important in its own way because it can corroborate, but also it can deviate. I always tell my students that don't be afraid when archaeology deviates from oral traditions to say what archaeology is. As told you, don't try to fit your archaeological work within oral tradition. Sometimes they can use both of them together, and sometimes you just have to let the evidence go apart. Let oral traditions say what it's going to say, and let archaeology say what it's going to say, and just move on. So, Alaafin the late Alaafin of Oyo was very helpful in terms of, for example, he shared a story with me that if I go back to Oyoile, I should look for a road between between Koso and Oyoile, and he described what that road looked like. You know, that his own father told him about that road that connected the two towns. Of course, I've not found that road yet, but it just underscores the need for us to do more satellite survey or LiDAR survey so that we can actually fully understand the urban landscape of that place. This is one of my dreams is to get funding to do LiDAR survey that will pull out the entire city and all the surrounding towns so that you can actually see the layout. Because the work that we are doing on the ground, it will take me maybe 4 generations of me to be able to map out the entire urban landscape, whereas LiDAR can just do that within 3 months, right? So oral traditions are valuable to archaeologists. We don't discount them, but we cannot push oral traditions beyond what it can give us. Lastly, about Iron Age. Yes, how do we know it's an Iron Age site? The materials that we are finding in BSM 6, we have evidence that they were using iron. I mean, we have knives, we have harrow points, so that's why we know that they are Iron Age people. We know their pottery, we know their stones. These are materials that were not present there before 500 BC. So all of these things are what make us call it Iron Age, especially the use of iron and also the manufacture of iron, because we are finding iron slag. Iron slag is the remnant material you get from iron smelting. So we are finding iron. As I speak, one of my postdocs is working on analyzing this iron slag so that we can understand the technique of iron production that they were using. So again, this is not a work that ends in the field. We still have many years in the laboratory. So that's why archaeology is a very slow cooking process. And in terms of the date, we now know that Africans, especially West Africans, did not go through the Bronze Age. We made a leap from Stone Age to Iron Age, and that Africa was one of the places in the world where iron was invented. It was not just one time that iron was invented. It was invented many times in West Africa, starting from about 1100 BC. So this Iron Age population that I'm talking about, when you see their material culture, you will be surprised how evolved how how the high quality of their material culture is amazing. Just wow, 500 BC, you are doing all of these things. Their pottery is well made. Their iron materials are well made. These are not people who are just learning how to make iron. You can see that they already have many generations of skills in making iron before they arrive at the site. And that's why I'm saying that the people I'm studying here were early Iron Age people. They were connected to an older network of Iron Age people stretching all the way to Senegal, to Ghana, and other parts. Many of us who are doing this work, we are now beginning to understand how interconnected Africa was. So it was colonialism that created boundary for us. I say, you are Nigeria, you are Ghana. No, our people were really integrated before. So all these ethnic differences that tend to structure our daily life today, those people did not have those boundaries.
Okay, thank you very much. Shola Akintunde, please, could you sort of ask a question? I mean, we still have a little bit of time, but if you could make it short and sweet, and then we can sort of maybe get one or two more questions, and then we have to wrap up. Yes.
Good evening, Mrs. Adeleke. Good evening, Prof. Good evening, everyone. Again, always, Prof, well done. Your work is invaluable to Africa, to West Africa, to everybody, not just the people in Oyo, let me not say states, but Oyo Empire, because like you rightly mentioned before, in your conclusion, it covers multiple countries, multiple communities, multiple cultures, and they were all assimilated into this Oyo Empire. Again, I just wanted to recognize or confirm that it is true that you actually happily present your work, because this is like the second or third time I'm experiencing your work. I know you did that for us at ICOMOS Nigeria when I was the PRO in 2020, and you just happily presented. I think you spent even more time than here, because all of us there were geeks, architects, technologies, engineers about it, But my questions, I have like 3 of them. The first one is, because of my background, I'm very interested in finding out if you found any architectural artifacts. I know, in fact, the picture we used for our flyer at ICOMOS was that wall that you showed. And it's difficult to tell what it is, how it was built, but we know that something important went there. And we know that, the skills, the craftsmanship is something that we've now lost, right? So only studying that would help us get it back. And so I just wanted to hear your perspective. And if you had like an architect on the team or that has ever visited that has given that architectural perspective. And then the second one is, I hear you very much when you say there's no funding. But from my little experience in volunteering, as I've been a member of Legacy for so long, what you find mostly is what I'll call resource sponsorship. So people giving their time, like I can already tell you, even on this call, I know about 5 people who will use their own money to come and spend like 3 months with you. They will feed themselves, they will clothe themselves, they will spend their own money to just spend 3 months with you, Yoli. I already know them, they're here. And there's more, So I think you should consider that. You might have to kind of sieve out the people who you think have relevant experience and things like that, but they are definitely people. And I'm speaking for architects, for engineers, people in the construction industry, who know that we've lost a lot of skills and only engaging with these artifacts. I won't call them ruins, because we have actual ruins in our cities now, empty 100-year-old buildings that nobody is using. It's just packing dust. 60-year-old buildings, we have them plenty all over Nigeria, all over West Africa. Yeah, so finally, you were talking about LiDAR and all of that. Again, on this call, I can see Oluwato Tofarati, who is an architect, but he's also a drone pilot. And what they use to do LiDAR is your drone. And I'm sure he's very well aware of what to do for drone footage, for LiDAR work, because he already helped us scan the legacy properties in the railway compound. So just to touch again on that previous point of that, there are people with requisite skills across Nigeria that will gladly support your work, and they might have slightly different approaches or interests, but it will all come under, the anthropology, the archaeology that you do. So I just wanted to add that as well. But please, if you can answer the question about architectural perspective. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much for these very positive feedback. Yes, we have found architectural artifacts. I mentioned during my presentation that, when we look at the way our ancestors built walls, we tend to use the pejorative term, mud wall, right? Because what happened is that when these sites were abandoned, when I don't want to say abandoned, when people moved away, the ecology of our landscape, really, they are not really kind to those kind of materials that are made of lateritic or clay. So they tend to wash away quickly. So most of the time, you have to be trained as an archaeologist to know that when you are standing in the bush, that you're actually standing on top of the collapsed wall of a house, that it's not just a natural formation. So, and in the process of excavating one of those walls, the palace wall that separated the palace of Oyoile from the Akesa market, we find evidence of plastering, that these people actually figure out a way to mix sand and limestone. They figure out a way to combine limestone with sand to create cement-like material that they could use to plaster the wall. That is something that we thought came with Western, colonization. No, we are already doing that. And also the way in which they build those walls, we could also see the use of retaining structure to make sure that the walls will not collapse. So there are many things that we are discovering, but of course, I welcome architects to join us and to use their skill sets to help us understand the technique, the technology that these people use in the past. And I will take you up on this LiDAR. Anyone who can assist us with LiDAR technology is welcome. Everyone is welcome, of course. Volunteer your time, that would be great. But this LiDAR is very important to us. We need it. And I've applied several times to different agencies because people think Africa has nothing much to offer. We are having challenges getting foreign funding for this LiDAR part. This LiDAR will change the story for us if you can do a LiDAR survey of this landscape.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to put Oluwatofarati on the spot. Let him respond to that comment because I put him on the spot and you've also accepted. So Oluwatofarati, please say something. What do you think about that?
Now, Shola, what Prof is doing is amazing. But the funny thing about drone technology is that with an infrared sensor on your camera, even things that the naked eye wouldn't see on the surface, right? You can just scan most of these landforms, and you might be shocked to see volumes of voids and spaces underneath the ground that have been kept hidden for centuries, and nobody would know. So it's amazing what technology can achieve in our day and age, and we have the technology right here at our doorsteps. You understand? So I think we need to begin to harness and stretch the frontiers of what's possible in the light of some of these findings. And as you can bet it that I would gladly make myself available, to be a part of this any day, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you, Shola. Thank you, Tofarati. That's wonderful. Well, I think I'm going to sort of try and wrap things up. I have one sort of little question that I just want to ask. You mentioned, you spoke about tourism and, you know, that more people need to really go and see what's going on. And these sites are actually located within the Old Oyo Game Park Reserve. Now, a lot of even sort of educated Nigerians don't actually know how many game parks we have. And if, you know, a lot of people don't even know that there's a game park, Old Oyo Game Park. Now, I was actually wondering whether the fact that it's located within sort of a game park, whether that is actually helping to preserve things. Because I know you said that, well, you know, the roads are bad, it's difficult to get there. There was one time, because my husband is from Shaki, and there was one time when I said to him, come on, let's go and look for Old Oyo, and we couldn't really find it. But now you've told me that the road is so bad, I'm sure he would hate me if I sort of took him down there. But I don't know whether you think that being that it's located in sort of quite a difficult place to access is actually helping to protect it. Because when you look at Oshogbo now, the only reason why the Oshogbo shrine sort of grove still exists is because it's been made a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Otherwise, that whole place would have been built on. And so I don't know, I think there's a balance really between how we sort of protect things. And I don't know whether having it in a forest environment, whether you are also going to sort of form alliance with environmentalists so that we can protect the forest, and also that will actually help to protect these sites, because that is one of the things. It's such an important thing that you're doing, and we really need to make sure that it's well protected. So I think that's you know, one of I mean, I have other questions, but I think we have to wrap up now. But I just wondered what you thought about, you know, sort of the environmental side of it, the fact that it's located within a forest, and how, whether that forest is actually being taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I can tell you that that forest is not being taken care of. There's logging, I mean, tree logging, cutting taking place as we speak. The capacity of the National Park Service is not there. They don't have the capacity. In the face of aggressiveness of loggers, I didn't want to include that in my talk because of time. That's why I took that part out of my lecture. The aggressiveness and the coordination of the people who are adamant in taking advantage of fully resourced National Park Service staff who are heroic men and women who are doing a great job. Many of them are being killed almost every year. We lose people. We lose National Park Service staff every year. Not sometimes 5, sometimes 6 being killed because they want to stop these loggers. They want to stop people who are doing illegal mining inside the National Park Service, who are doing illegal animal killing inside the National Park Service. So these are problems that are there. Okay, we should not cover them up. They are there. The remoteness doesn't mean that the site is being preserved. No. Anything that we can do to assist the National Park Service, they've not sent me to say this, but I'm saying this. Anything we can do to collaborate with them, they will appreciate it because they are doing their best, but the resources, again, some people are just simply want to destroy this site. So things are not pretty, I'm sorry. And that's why it is very urgent to have a documentation of what is there before we lose them.
Yeah.
That's why, again, I'm happy that Mr. Badamasi is very interested in collaborating on LIDAR. We need to document the landscape. Yeah. Maybe if we can preserve what is, we can document it now. Maybe when it's destroyed, we can bring it back later, you know, and reconstruct it. Because that is the way I look at what is happening. Is that there's environmental crisis going on because of logging, so that many of the wildlife are either being killed or they are disappearing because they are losing their habitats, you know, because of tree cutting, you know, as well as other other actors.
I mean, that's very interesting. I don't know whether you're aware of what's been happening with Gashaka Gumti, and there's sort of a whole organization that's set up and been raising a lot of money to sort of try and help the rangers there. So maybe something similar needs to happen for the Oyo Park. But I think, yes, I think this needs a lot of, publicity to let people know what's going on. And I think, of course, legacy, we will do what we can on that score. But I really think that, I think it really, I mean, funding and also getting people interested, and sometimes people who are Nigerians who are living outside of Nigeria to also, I mean, not necessarily people who are academics, but ordinary Nigerians who are living outside of Nigeria, for them to sort of know about this and to get their interest. I mean, that could also be a way of raising funds, because I think that with the Gashaka Gumti, if you look at the model, I think the people who are I mean, to do something similar to that model would be a good idea. Okay,
Yes.
well, I'm really, I mean, we could go on really, because as I said, this presentation, it really sort of exceeded my expectations totally. I had no idea that you have done so much work. And I just want to show this to you. I don't know whether you can see this. I bought this in 1999. And so I do have one of your publications. And of course, when I bought it, I never realized that, we would sort of get to know each other. And I don't know whether you want to share, you have a new book out. I don't know whether you want to share your screen and let people know about your book. I don't know whether you have it at hand, or you can hold it up if you've got it near.
No,
you don't have it.
I have.
Wow.
I have it in one of. I have it in one of the slides. Let me not on this slide, but let me see whether I have it.
Okay, because I mean, I mean, this book, your latest book, which is called The Yoruba: A New History, has won some prizes. And I think it's including the Isaac Delano Prize for Outstanding Book in Yoruba Studies. So I think that is something that people need to know about.
Yes. Unfortunately,
yes.
well,
anyway, everybody,
I don't have it. I don't have it.
What I will do is I'll put it on Legacy's social media so that people know that the book is out there. So this has been really wonderful. I mean, I just want to thank everybody who joined and everybody who stayed. And I know there are a lot of other people out there who really want to know about this, and we are recording this, and so we will actually make it available. Oh, wonderful!
By the way, I have it here. I have it.
Oh, great! Yes. I mean, we'll sort of publicize that on our social media.
My wife is listening to me, and they decided to bring it out from our office.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay. So I just want to thank you again for giving your time and your effort to this. I mean, you really are doing groundbreaking work. And it's really, it's a privilege to actually, it's a privilege to actually sort of listen to you and what you've done. And all of your students who have joined as well, well done. You really have a wonderful master in terms of archaeology who is actually leading you. And I think really stay the course. I can imagine how difficult it is to do all this work, but what you're doing is really wonderful. So, I just want to sort of close here. I mean, in the chat, I think if anybody wants to get in contact with Legacy, to join Legacy, our details are in the chat. So, again, I think for people who joined late, my name is Koso Adeleke. And so on behalf of Legacy, the Historical and Environmental Interest Group of Nigeria, I just want to say thank you very much. And we will definitely be keeping in touch. And thank you once again for your time and effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Great session, madam. Thank you for bringing this to us. Thank you so much. Nice.
Well, Well, I mean, I had sort of had I think I think we've stopped recording now.
Okay,
Yeah,
let
can
me
we,
stop.
yes, let's stop recording. Yeah, I mean, for a while, you know, I'd heard about old Oyoile, and I really wanted to go there. And I remember Prof once said to me that, oh, he goes every July, he's down there, and I'm welcome to go along, you know. And